Hey friends, we're off here again with the Louisville ProActivist Report, coming to you with my second interview of the day. Got another one coming up tomorrow, so just check all these out. Great interview for you right now. Got an elected official on my show. We're going to talk about some new things, some old things, you know, some legislation, everything in between. So let's get this started. Let me get this camera flipped. There we go. And I'd like to welcome to the show, back for the second time, Metro Council Member for District 4, Jecorey Arthur. Thanks so much for being here today.
Please, thank you for having me.
All right, so you know, this week, I guess was the last week, you had a big announcement, and you know, we're going to start off talking about that. So you came up for a neighborhood advisory board for District 4. So just talk about that. How'd that come about? You know, what exactly is this thing?
So the neighborhood advisory board will be bringing together our 10 residential neighborhoods within Metro Council District 4 to give me advice about policy. That policy might mean the neighborhood development fund that each council district has to spend, our capital infrastructure fund to fix sidewalks, parks, roads, alleys, the city budget overall, or what ordinances we should be prioritizing, what political issues are most important to our constituents, and how can we work together to address them. You know, before we created this, there was really no organized effort to get all of the neighborhoods together. So this is a first of its kind, I would say ever, just because since redistricting, I have been the only council person of these specific neighborhoods in our new council district. So I'm excited because there are a lot of geographic, economic, political boundaries between these neighborhoods. And we're getting rid of all of that just to come together, sit at the table, and have discussions about policy. You know, the neighborhoods in themselves are like a small boundary that we think about, but the council district brings them together in a different way. And I always say that the power of the people is stronger than the people in power. And this is us reminding people they have power, but more importantly, how to use it by directly influencing policy. So I'm excited because we'll be working with constituents who live in their neighborhoods, who sleep in their neighborhoods, who eat in their neighborhoods. And I think that's important because as a council person, you know, I got 10 neighborhoods that touch our district, but I only live in one of them. And even if I was like working council 24/7, I will never have the same experience as someone who lives in Butchertown, as someone who lives in California, as someone who lives in Phoenix Hill, as someone who lives in any of the 9 neighborhoods that aren't Russell, where I proudly live. So your experience, what you notice living there now, but also just, you know, growing up there, being there for however many years is valuable. And we don't always hear that. You know, we have monthly meetings. We have weekly meetings where we meet with smaller groups, but these monthly meetings where anyone and everyone can attend our town hall, you can call in, you can show up virtually. We don't always have representation from all the neighborhoods. So this is a way to have a sure group of representatives from each neighborhood to share what they want, what they need, and more importantly, work with us to make sure that we get it. So I'm excited about it. Former Councilman Brandon Cohen used to have one for District 8. So this is very similar, but ours is specific to people who live in the neighborhoods and who are constituents of our council district, working with us to make decisions.
Now, you've already mentioned 4 of the neighborhoods. What are the other 6 neighborhoods in District 4?
So we go as far west up to 32nd. So we got a little small chunk of Portland. We have about half of Russell. We got Parkland, about half of Parkland now. That's a new neighborhood that was added to the district. We took over all of California, going down Broadway. We got a little piece of old Louisville, all of Smoketown, Phoenix Hill, Butchertown, Clifton Heights, 10 neighborhoods in total that are touching it. And then of course we have downtown, the central business district. So 10 residential neighborhoods, the Central Business District itself, the East Market Business District, aka Nulu, but we're focusing on the residential areas. So the places where our constituents live, where our voters live, those are the priority people in our district. So that's who we're hoping to bring together and organize. And really, it's not just about them working with me personally. It's about them working with this council office, because this seat, the District 4 seat, doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the people of District 4. And them coming together, organizing, and figuring out what are our priorities, that's important no matter who's in this seat. Because if the 10 neighborhoods are organized, I think really it makes for more efficient and effective policymaking. I would hate to pass something that's not done in community, and then neighborhoods come on the back end and say, well, we didn't support that, or we didn't want that, or that's not a priority for us. This is a way for us to be on the same page, so that when I'm in this council chamber, I'm not doing a lot of guesswork. And that guesswork is done after I do a lot of homework. But what's more important is if I go into there for sure knowing, okay, 10 out of 10 neighborhoods think this is a priority, or 10 out of 10 neighborhoods want this based on their representatives on this board, I think it just makes for a more sustained policy that lasts longer and be more impactful. So, regardless of who's sitting in this seat, these neighbors can always come together and can always hold their elected official accountable. But if they're, divided and conquered, that's a lot harder to do. It weakens your political power. The more people you got, the more power you have. This is an example of building that power with everyday folks.
And so speaking of power to the people, what is the process for picking the people on the advisory board?
So we went back and forth a lot about how to do it in a way that was buzzword income and equitable. So what we decided was there are really only two qualifications. You have to live in the district, which, it's obvious, and you also need to live in the neighborhood that you want to represent. Very simple qualifications. We don't even have an age limit. Technically, my 5-year-old son could apply. It's a conflict of interest, so he probably wouldn't get on it. But we don't have an age limit. So you apply LouisvilleKY.gov/District 4, or you can call us 574-1104. Do the website, because we in and out right now with the holidays. But apply online, and then what we're doing to select people is we just shuffle it. It's going into names are going into a randomizer. We're going to pick one person to represent who's already in an organized neighborhood association or some sort of neighborhood group, and then we'll have another neighborhood representative who's from outside of that. So our neighborhood org names will be put in one hat, and then the other hat will be just people who live in the neighborhood, who live in the district, who want to get involved, but maybe they, for whatever reason, aren't in their neighborhood association, or they don't know about it. So giving them a chance too is important, because we don't want to just, touch the same people who are always involved, or always, involved in making decisions in their neighborhood, or who have access. It should be for anybody, regardless if you're in a neighborhood association or not. So we just randomize it. We throw the names in the hat, and we hit shuffle, and whatever comes back, that's what comes back.
And when those people get in, how long are they in for?
So they're set up right now on 1-year terms. Obviously, nobody's being forced to be on the advisory board. So if you leave, we will go back to the applicant list and randomize again. But we're expecting folks to have at least a 1-year commitment, which is important, just because people coming in and out, they're going to be at different levels of knowledge about the rules of how we spend neighborhood development funds, or what we've already put money into. And then, it really wastes time. And when you waste time, it impacts your efficiency to be able to move policy and make things happen. So we're hoping that people can serve for 1 year, but no matter what, every December is when we'll go ahead and hit the shuffle button again and try to get new members on board.
So say somebody serves out their year, they're interested in doing it again. Are they just in the randomizer? Or are they just out altogether? Or can they come back and represent again? How does that work?
We'll throw them back in the randomizer. Most of the guidelines were made just in a meeting with constituents. We had 2 interest meetings, and we just asked questions like, how should we set up the app? What questions should we ask? So all the guidelines, like when you see them, they were originally in a Google Doc. Of course, they're on the Metro website now, but they were originally just in a Google document that people could comment on, call us and give us feedback. And we just kept working it and chipping away until We felt happy with what we had. We had a final interest meeting. We put it out for folks for a few weeks to give us feedback about it. What we have is what we came up with, working with our constituents. So yes, as of now, you can absolutely jump back on and serve again.
And so what is the long-term goal for the advisory board? How do you think it's going to help boost up District 4?
I think the long-term goal is to pass policy, which is my job. Legislators are supposed to legislate, but pass policy that comes from community. It's real easy for an elected official, like I said earlier, to come in here and guess. It's real easy for them to have decisions that are driven by one person who has the most access or who has your ear, which we'll talk about a policy that I just recently learned might have been driven by one incident, or policies that have been driven by one incident. But I think the long-term goal is for the 10 neighborhoods to come together and agree on a political agenda to better the neighborhoods, to better the district. And then we work together to get that figured out. Me coming in here and pushing something by myself is not the same amount of power as me coming in here and pushing something with the weight of 10 neighborhoods, next to me. And then who can they influence in other neighborhoods across the city, other council districts across the city, other House districts, Senate districts across the Commonwealth. It's about building people power. So, the purpose of it, we're bringing people together, but what we're really doing is good old-fashioned community organizing, having conversations about what are the problems, what are the solutions, how can we add more people, add more capacity to do something about it. It just so happens that, not all community organizing is based in policy, but since my job is to be a policy maker, ours is. So passing policy, stopping policy, in some cases changing policy. That's a long-term goals for the sake of, bettering District 4, which I believe would better Louisville as a whole, because we got, I would say, some of the most blaring obstacles within our district. But an obstacle just means you got opportunities. So that's what we're doing, trying to make opportunities for the district and then the city at large.
So what kind of feedback have you gotten from your fellow Metro Council members? Does it sound like maybe any of these other members might try to do the same thing in their districts, or what are you hearing?
I know that Councilwoman Donna Purvis in District 5 have been working on something similar. So she definitely is a council district that I know of that will have an advisory board if she doesn't already. I'm sure others will be interested. Everyone kind of operates their offices differently. So, I can't speak for them, but I know for us, we have the highest concentration of poverty, highest concentration of housing instability, highest concentration of unemployment. It's important for us to come together because I believe that the people who are directly impacted, mostly impacted by some of the harmful policies, are in our district. So if we can come together and we can figure out how to shift the needle in terms of politics in the city, anybody can do it. And we're just going to be the blueprint. We're going to do it, prove that it can work, which we've already seen in like smaller units of people and units of power, something as simple as like the Crown Act. An 11-year-old and a 12-year-old, two little Black girls came to me, presented to me with the young prodigies to introduce that and to pass that. If they can do it, anybody can do it. And if District 4 can do it, anybody can do it. So have some of my colleagues, express interest in doing this? Yes. Have some of them attempted to do something like that? Yes. I don't know if I've ever seen an impact at the level that I'm trying to, have and build. And like I said, community organizing, because some of those might be advisory, and then you give the council person advice, and that's that. I'm trying to build people power. We're trying to build people power, across the neighborhoods, across the district, across Louisville, across the Commonwealth. A lot of people are cynical about politics, pessimistic about politics. They don't think it works. They don't understand how it connects to their everyday lives. We're trying to change that. But sometimes it's hard to get involved if you aren't informed. So I'm hoping, going back to like the purpose, passing policy, it's legislation, but before you get to the legislation, you also have to have organization, bringing the people together. You got to have education, whether that's presenting solutions without knowing what the problem is, or me personally not knowing what the problem is, or constituents, residents not understanding how we can address the problem. Hell, tenant rights. A lot of folks don't know that tenant rights are controlled by a state act, by a state government. There's some wiggle room that we could have, like with our rental registry ordinance that we just amended not too long ago. But for the most part, what you can and cannot do as a landlord, or what you can and cannot do as a tenant, are controlled by the state. So how can we, as the most populous city, build people power to influence changing tenant laws? We haven't done that yet. We haven't done it to the fullest potential, but it's going to take people organizing into units of power. And this is just another unit of power that doesn't currently exist that we're about to make happen. So we're moving policy here at the local level and Metro Council, of course, but my hope is like long term. Now we got an advisory board full of residents in Louisville who have networks and are connected with other units of power and people that they can influence across the Commonwealth. Because, the fight's local, but we can't ever forget what we got to do to fight back in Frankfurt. That's so important. In some cases, more important than what we could do here on the Metro Council level.
So anything about the advisory board we haven't mentioned yet that you want to add before we move on?
Now, just again, if you're interested, louisvilleky.gov/district4. It's a pretty simple form. There's only a couple required, questions. Everything else is optional, but we are looking for people all across District 4. So, for sure, if you live in Butchertown, if you live in California, if you live in Smoketown, most likely if you live in downtown, you're going to be able to qualify. If you live in other neighborhoods that we have parts of, like Russell, Portland, Parkland, just check louisvilleky.gov. You can check your address and see what council district you're in. If you live in the district, if you live in the neighborhood, apply, and you can apply all year round. We will always keep a full list of people who are interested to tap back into if we need them. But even if you're not on the advisory board, our meetings will be open to the public. We'll travel to the different neighborhoods. You can show up, pull up, and hopefully we go up.
All right. Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I think you kind of touched on this. A lot of people locally, state, nationally are just really just kind of fed up with politics. They don't feel like they have a voice. They don't feel represented. Too much big money in politics, and people aren't being heard. And we have very, very few politicians that listen to the people, that work for the people. I think you're one of the rare few, not just locally, but nationally, one of the people that's actually in the fight for the people and actually here to represent the people. And then to take it yet another step further, bring this advisory board where anybody in the district can step up. Everybody knows when they walk out their front door what's going on in their neighborhood. Who knows it better than the people in the neighborhood? So to bring that direct representation, people can feel like they have a voice. If they're not on the advisory board, their neighbor down the street probably is. And so that's direct representation, and that's what this country is all about in my mind, or what it should be about. And I really hope some of the other council members see this and take it to heart, and they all do something like this, and that can definitely help move the city forward. So let's kind of pivot to, talking about the Metro Council a little bit. We had elections recently, so we have several new members coming on. There's also 2 members who have recently been named deputy mayor, so that's another 2 openings yet to be filled. So what are your thoughts on that, on how the Metro Council will be shaped next year?
I think that the Metro Council will be more conservative in 2023 because 2 Democrats lost, Councilwoman Amy Holton Stewart in District 25, Councilman Mark Fox, District 13, lost to 2 Republicans. So the Republican caucus will go from 7 to 9, which is important because those 7 votes, like the Black caucus, the Black council members, those are half of the votes that you need to pass legislation. Well, now they have over half of the votes that they need to pass legislation, and you need 14. So they really only got to pick up, a handful of other council members. So they're moving towards a space where they can pass policy just as a caucus if they convince just a handful of folks to agree with them. So I think that the council just on paper will be a lot more conservative, and in terms of political philosophies will be a lot more conservative. As far as the appointment process goes, I hate it because I think that the people who live in a council district should pick who their next council person is going to be. But because the Metro Council appointment process exists, and I guess it's according to state law, we have 30 days to appoint someone, and if we don't, then the mayor gets to pick. So we have 30 days to appoint someone. It's based on who the Metro Council votes for, not based on who the people in the district vote for. I'm gonna do like a trial balloon going into the first appointment and just put out a public poll and just ask, like, who lives in District X? These are the people who applied. Who would you vote for? And just see what happens there, and kind of just run that poll over however many days and try to do it as democratically as possible and vote for that person that the people choose. I don't know why we don't do special elections. It's especially like going to be detrimental for District 3, because at this point I'm thinking that person would be serving almost for an entire term, because that election just occurred last month. So that person is going to be there for some years unless there is some sort of special election. But I don't like the appointment process. Just going back to what I said about the neighborhood advisory board, I live in one of the 10 neighborhoods, just like I live in one of the 26 council districts. So I don't know what's best for District 3. I don't know what's best for District 6. I don't know what's best for any other district. We're trying to figure out what's best for our district, constantly. It's a constant struggle. So I'm hoping to do that poll process and see what the people want, because that's who should be picking their elected officials.
All right. Just a quick follow-up on that. With the two people out, like, how is the council going to function till then? Do you have any votes coming up before those two people are appointed, or is that all going to be pushed back until the council is whole?
So we'll still function and flow. Usually if people are absent, I always say we need 14 votes for anything. But if people are absent, then the majority obviously is less. So instead of 14 votes, we might need 13 or 12 or 11. It just depends on how many people aren't there, as long as we have a quorum. But council business will continue. We have a big break in the middle of January. We got some business we'll take care of at the beginning of the year, but we won't have committees again until late January, going into early February. So I'm hoping we have some people picked and ready to go, hopefully closer to the beginning of the year, so that those council districts, the people, the constituents there, get representation and they get a say in some of the policies that'll be coming up.
All right. So there's a lot going on in 2022. So let's just talk about a little of it. Just kind of do a best, worst, missed opportunities kind of thing. So let's start off on a positive note. Looking back over the legislation that's come up this year, what do you think have been some victories for the people?
A lot's happened. I'll kind of stick with 3. I got my Legistar open up right now, and just for people to know, Legistar is the program where you can file legislation. It also keeps track of legislation from the past, what failed, what passed, the date that it was created, any attachments or exhibits that go with that legislation. Everyone should have a Legistar page. It's kind of like the standard used across the country for elected officials, at least at city government level. You can also see vote history and attendance history, which we got added in 2022. So again, that's like example of policy. You should be able to see how your council person votes. You should be able to see what legislation they file. You should be able to see when they show up or don't show up for meetings.
This is somebody anybody can access, not just.
Yeah, anybody and everybody. So if you look up your council person on Google University, just look up their name and type in Legistar, and that page will pull up, and it has different tabs that you can select. You can see what committees they're on. You can see the agendas. You can see pretty much all of the Metro Council business through Legistar. And you can also access it from LouisvilleKY.gov too. But just to go to the positives, at the very beginning of the year, it might have been one of the first committee meetings, we appropriated, by we I mean District 4, the people of District 4, our office we appropriated $60,000 from our neighborhood development fund. $60,000 on the grand scale of a need when it comes to houselessness and shelter is not a lot. But for our office, it was a lot because, neighborhood development funds are usually only $65,000 a year for each council office. So we appropriated $60,000 from that fund for winter shelter for folks, because we know we have a housing crisis, we have a shelter shortage, and there's not a lot of places for people to go. So we put that money up to help make sure that people who were unsheltered got extended stays for weather emergencies throughout the cold months. And I'm proud to say that's not the first policy I wanted to mention. We got that passed, but fast forward, we had a budget surplus, and we got 300,000 now instead of just that 60,000. I tried to amend the surplus to be 1.2 million, which was what the ask was from the Homeless Services Department. That failed. But then after hearing from the director, Dr. Susan Buccino, she convinced some of my colleagues to move some money. So we found $300,000 of unspent American Rescue Plan money that we were able to move from the Public Health Department to put up for winter shelter. So that's a win. The fact that we got that 60,000 at the beginning of the year, but now fast forward, we turned it into 300,000. And I'm hoping like every year, this is a guaranteed program because people need to have a right to shelter. No matter what their situation is, we should be a safety net for folks. Something else that kind of snuck under the radar a little bit was that we amended our fair housing ordinance to codify, put into law a practice that a lot of people in the Louisville Apartment Association were already using, but we wanted to clarify it in the law. In 2020, the Fair Housing Ordinance was updated so that legal sources of income could be used for people to rent. If you had Section 8 vouchers, if you had housing vouchers, you shouldn't be turned away. But some landlords found a loophole. You got this income to rent ratio that they use. You got to have 3 times the rent in your income to get approved. What they were doing is saying, okay, you use a voucher, you still got to have 3 times the rent in your income of the total amount of the rent, as opposed to saying, this is what you're actually paying. You need to have 3 times that amount. So we adjusted the ordinance to reflect that so that people using vouchers could only have their actual part that they were paying counted towards that rent. So it just helps with discrimination. It helps make sure that people can get into housing faster, not have any issues. And then, the last thing I'll mention is the amendments to the rental registry ordinance. Before we passed this, if you had an issue with your landlord not maintaining the property, you had to call codes and regulations. You had to, file a service request. And I've heard from so many constituents, so many tenants saying they were getting retaliated against. Some of them have told us in private, some of us, them have been organizing like the Louisville Tenants Union and, said it loud and proud to the public. We deserve dignity with our housing. We deserve to feel comfortable. We deserve to, have our maintenance issues addressed without getting evicted or without being intimidated. So we changed our rental registry ordinance so that, certain areas with higher percentage of renters will have random inspections now, proactive inspections. So it's not a matter of you complaining on the landlord and then retaliating against you. City government is going to come in and find something and try to hold your landlord accountable. It also helps take the burden off of renters, because when it was complaint driven, well, now you basically are a property manager. Now you got to keep up with what to complain about or what not to complain about. Even if you don't have any fear, you got to have that knowledge to know what you should go into. But I'm excited about that just because it helps protect, tenants, but also we're being proactive so that the housing doesn't deteriorate over time if it hasn't already, and addressing things before they become an issue. But I'm excited about that. It just recently passed. We had to kind of save it because it was about to get watered all the way down about almost a month ago. But we were able to focus that legislation and clean it up a bit and get that passed. So our new rental registry, and it almost passed unanimously. A few folks held out on this. But those are just some of the top W's that I'm excited about. I'm gonna do some honorable mentions real quick. One was a resolution that we passed for voting rights at corrections. And it actually helped get, over 120 people in corrections registered to vote and able to, take up an important political action, which is choosing who they want their elected officials to be. And then also we passed a language access ordinance that mandates all of our government agencies got to have a policy and a pathway for people who are non-English speaking or struggle speaking English or don't speak at all. You need to have a way for them to access your agency services. As of now, you know, if somebody comes up to a Metro Council meeting and they speak Mandarin and we don't have an interpreter available for them, we might as well say no Chinese people on the door.
Right.
You know, and that's discriminatory. So we pass a policy to update that and make sure that people have access to government services, whether you speak the language or not.
Nice. Yeah, that's definitely helps with representation. You know, United States is a melting pot, and people come here, but they still need to communicate, and you know they have issues and things to say. So yeah, I like that a lot. Okay, let's kind of flip it a little bit. You know, take the downside of the year. What do you think is the worst legislation to come through, or something that you were really disappointed to see pass? Anything that you think that might not have had a good effect on the people here in Louisville?
The encampment ordinance was updated, and the first version of it that was filed was nuts. I mean, it had a provision about not leaving your things on the sidewalk and those things being confiscated. And the way it was written, I mean, my 5-year-old son could have left his scooter laying on the sidewalk at a park, and technically, you know, Public Works or parks could have came and taken it. So the way that was written originally was just like really harmful. We spent months fighting back on that in committee. Myself, Councilman Bill Hollander, Councilwoman Castor Chambers Armstrong was in that fight too. And we got some of those parts amended out. But what eventually ended up passing was an ordinance that bans sleeping, camping at parks anytime, but also sleeping in your motor vehicle, your car, in parks at any time. And, you know, there are a couple other like minor changes, but those are the main ones, in my opinion, that will be extremely hurtful. A lot of the council members who supported this legislation, who sponsored this legislation, they are, you know, citing and referencing situations where, you know, people were sleeping in parks that made them unusable for the public. So from their perspective, you know, public right of way being accessible to the public is more important than my perspective, which is that, yeah, people should have access to the public right away, but what happens when that issue is challenged by the fact that people don't have places to go, whether they don't have housing or they don't have shelter? I think that's more important. So, and I personally had to deal with this. You know, I've gone to parks with my kids where somebody might be sleeping on the slide or sleeping at the playground. Is that inconvenient for my kid who wants to play? Yeah, but it's not as inconvenient as not having housing or not having shelter. We got to have our priorities straight. And in my opinion, the priority should be life-sustaining actions, which is what someone is taking when they sleep in their car or when they live in their car or when they live at the park or camp at the park. That's way more important than the convenience of my kid playing on that slide. You know how many parks we got that I can go to? You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's really like the root of the disagreement that I have, that 7 other council members who voted no on that ordinance have, compared to the people who supported it. But I would say that's probably the worst piece of legislation to pass. But on a positive, it passed with 16 votes, which means it didn't get a supermajority, and the mayor has the power to veto that. So Coalition for the Homeless, ACLU, BLM Louisville, so many partners who were fighting against this legislation are calling on Mayor Greg Fisher to veto this. There's a link that we're sharing out where you can sign a petition calling on him to veto it and send it back to the Metro Council and hopefully send it back and defeat it. But with the change in the makeup of the council next year, I'm not sure we'll have more votes or less votes to defeat it. But he can't veto that, and we are calling on him too. So if you're angry about this, as you should be, you should take action about this by signing that petition. Go to the Coalition for the Homeless's Facebook, Twitter, they got Instagram, website, sign the petition, share it with a neighbor, share it with somebody who's angry. If you see somebody angry on your socials, share that link. The people got to speak up and we got to fight back. And hopefully we can start doing that in a proactive way instead of just a reactive way when something passes we don't like.
And also I have that link on my page. If you want to scroll through my Facebook page, it can be found there. I'm so glad you mentioned that piece of legislation. That is, of everything this year, that's the one that's really fired me up. And you know, I called David James about it and left a message. But it's something I find to be just cruel, and it doesn't actually fix homelessness. So you're just doing it to be cruel in my eyes. None of this is going to make homeless go away. None of this is going to reduce homelessness at all. So, you know, but I can say, you know, as somebody, I live right next to a park. I walk my dog there 5, 6, 7 times a week. We do have homeless people stay there. I still walk my dog there 5, 6, 7 times a week. Sometimes somebody might be in my path or whatever. I choose another path. It doesn't really matter. We still spend time in the park. I would rather go out of my way. You know, it's more important for these people to have somewhere to live. And when they don't, they got to do what they got to do. Shelters are full, and you know, it is what it is. So we have to be proactive in the community in other ways, with housing and mental services and all the other resources that are necessary. But being cruel and penalizing people at the lowest point of their life fixes nothing. You can't just be cruel to somebody that's homeless and they say, well, okay then, and they get a house that night and another job the next morning. It's just, that doesn't work. So thank you for bringing that up. Thank you for fighting the fight. You all make sure you sign that petition. Got not quite 10 minutes left here. Did you see any legislation maybe that didn't go through that maybe was a missed opportunity that you thought could have been beneficial had it gone through?
Yeah, and I actually apologize on the record to Council Member Jecorey from District 26, because he was sponsoring legislation that would have bought this, you know, hotel that's just vacant right now and turn it into shelter. And I wasn't in opposition to it, but based on the experts who assessed the hotel, who toured the hotel, it wasn't like it was something that we could buy and then turn into a shelter the next day. It would have taken a lot of work. So I was unsure about it. But, you know, fast forward to my thought process now, the homelessness task force came up with this 4-prong approach. It included a safe outdoor space. We funded that. It included funding more affordable housing. We funded that. It included more permanent supportive housing for people who needed extra wraparound resources. And it also included more transitional shelter. We didn't fund that. And what Councilmember Jecorey proposed would have funded that at this vacant hotel. It was a missed opportunity, because here we are now. Yeah, we put a bunch of money into affordable housing, into permanent supportive housing, into the safe outdoor space. None of that would have addressed the tens of thousands of housing unit deficit that we have. But what it would do, if it was all built up right now, it would have helped get people off the streets. But it takes time to build housing. You know, we got several hundred units that'll come online in the next couple of years. You know, that's not ready yet. And the safe outdoor space, shout out to them. They're doing everything they can and doing incredible work. They can only take, you know, 40, 50, maybe 60 people at a time, depending on, you know, people's situations and households. So here we are with the middle option that we didn't fund that could take people off the streets now. And now we got to depend on, you know, like private hotels to take care of that need that we're working with. And we got some money for that, but it would have been a lot more efficient, cost-wise and logistically. I think that if, you know, the city would have purchased something and the city would have, you know, managed it or co-managed it with one of our grassroots partners. But we didn't do that. We didn't fund that. Maybe we'll find some loose change coming into the new year to do it. But that's a regret that I have, not pushing for that, because I'm thinking long term, we need to put as much money into housing as we can, because that transitional shelter, key word is transitional. So in several years, when we have more housing online, I'll feel good. But right now, it doesn't feel good just because, people need more shelter. And instead of depending on the hotels, we should have something available for them as a city government.
All right. So last thing I want to talk about here is just outlook for 2023 from the council. Are there already goals set by the council of like what you're going to be focusing on next year, good or bad, or does that not happen till January? What's the status on that right now?
So I'm gonna tell you a little secret. The Metro Council as a whole really doesn't have a political agenda. Now, the mayor will send a legislative agenda to the General Assembly, and we might give some feedback and give some input on that. But city government, Metro Council, there's no political agenda. So when we ask what are the goals, we got goals as District 4. We might work with another council person on goals that are like legislation specific, but as a whole, the council doesn't have goals. That's important for the people to know, because it means there's an opportunity for the people to establish the goals, for the people to set the agenda. And then you use that agenda with a mass groundswell of people to hold Metro Council accountable. And I would argue you probably don't want Metro Council making up the agenda or making up the goals. That's an opportunity that I'm going to work on more in 23, going back to community organizing. That's the only way to change this city. So I'm gonna be putting a whole lot of time, some resources into that as much as possible, just to set it up and to make that work start happening in like long term, no matter where I'm at. I want to be able to point to the District 4 office and say that is a vehicle for people to organize and to make change in this city. And like I said, we can do it because we got the people who are struggling the most, so we can do it. Anybody can do it. And that for me, like, will be a specific focus going into 23. And I think everybody should get engaged with that. Every time something happens that makes you angry that the Metro Council does, that should move you to action. Anger should move you to action. But not just like one-off and like microwave advocacy. Who are you plugged in with? Whether it's a grass tops organization, grassroots, who are you working with on a regular basis to make change in this city? A person individually by themselves cannot make change. You can make individual change, but it's going to take you linking up with somebody else, somebody's else, and being able to actually make change in this city. And that takes organized, takes people power, community organizing. So I'm excited to like make that a key priority for 23 moving forward, because that's what it takes, regardless of who's sitting in these council seats. If the people are organized, the city will change.
Perfect words to leave out on. I like that. So again, how can people contact you and follow you?
LouisvilleKY.gov/District 4. You can find links to our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Our email is on there if you want to hit us up. Our phone number is on there if you want to hit us up. We'll be in and out over the next couple of weeks with the winter break. But please tap in, sign up for our newsletter, sign up for our advisory board. We have a monthly teletown hall that you can always call in or video in. And let's get to work and let's keep it going.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on, Jecorey. If you want to hear more from Jecorey, he was on before. Pull up that interview after this interview and hear all about some legislation. We talked about all kinds of legislation there. I just want to give a shout out to you, man, as being one of the few politicians, city, state, federal here that I like. You work for the people. You have the backbone to actually come on independent media. I will springboard that to say any other Metro Council, state, Senate, state reps, our federal senators, representatives, if you want to come on, you have an open platform on here to come on and talk to the people. But I don't really, I don't think I'll see too many of you. I think Jecorey is one of the very few who will actually take the time out, who cares enough, who, like I said, has the backbone to come on here and talk about these things. So appreciate that, man. We need more of you. in politics, locally, federally, statewide. That's what we need, is people working for the people, people with the backbone, people who aren't afraid to face actual media that's not just a softball of how great are you are, and the silly stuff. So thanks. I know you're busy. I know it's holidays, so appreciate it. This advisory board looks great. That's pretty much all I have to say about that. So
Thank you, man.
so let me wrap this up real quick. There we go. So thanks for watching. This is interview number 2 here in a 2-day span. Check out my interview with Karen Little from Alley Cat Advocates I did earlier today. Tomorrow I'll be out of town on a road trip. I'm talking to Matthew Luttrell. He is organizing Amazon unions here in the state of Kentucky. He's the lead guy, so we're going to talk all about that. Again, I'm nonprofit, local independent media, so you can help me by liking, sharing, commenting. These are all things that boost the algorithm and spread the message. And that's that's all I have to say about that. But thanks again, everybody. We'll see you all tomorrow. And until next time, remember, always think critically.